tonight, you're not easing into sleep with something gentle. You're about to fall asleep inside a test. The galaxy thinks it understands, and it's wrong. Have you noticed how we polish everything we're ashamed of? Histories, reputations, even starships? The newer, the shinier, the safer it feels. But the things that really protect us are rarely pretty. They're dented, scratched, half forgotten. It's a strange thought, isn't it, that the ugliest thing in the room might be the only one that stands up when everyone else runs. I've always been fascinated by that gap between appearance and truth, between what a crowd mocks and what it should be terrified of, because somewhere some committee once decided which stories would be told and which would be sealed away, and the people born later never got a vote. So tonight, instead of replaying your own day again and again, you and I are going to drift with someone whose entire job is to stay calm while stepping straight into that gap. Settle in how you like, because we're going to sit behind the eyes of Ambassador Jonah Reid, a man trained to keep his voice steady while dozens of alien powers try to rattle him. They think they're putting humanity on trial. They think the battered human ship drifting toward their perfect ring station is a joke, a prop in their show. They don't know that the rush ship they're laughing at once survived a war. And as Jonah straps in, watching that old hull draw closer to the brightest stage in the galaxy, something buried in its metal is starting to listen. You are not falling asleep alone tonight. You are sitting high above Earth, looking down at the dark curve of oceans and slow city lights, carried in the mind and eyes of a man who's trained all his life to stay calm. Ambassador Jonah Reid. People back home see him on quiet news feeds and say his voice sounds like late-night radio, smooth, careful, never rushed, like he has time to listen to every fear and lay it down gently on a table, then slide it away. Tonight, he is taking that same voice, that same calm to a place where dozens of alien species will stare, judge, and laugh. And he is doing it aboard a ship that looks like trash, rust, scars, bent plates. An old human hull drifting toward a bright ring in space where sleek ships gleam like knives. The Galactic Council thinks this is a test of humanity. What they do not know is that the test is older than their rules. Older than their station, older even than their memories of the first great war they pretend never happened. So lie back, let your breathing fall into the slow comfort of Jonah's training. In 4 counts. Hold 4. Out 4. You are about to sit inside a dented ship that the galaxy mocks. You are about to feel it wake up, and all you have to do is listen and rest. Night over Earth looks soft from orbit. Far below, city lights draw quiet shapes across the dark. Like sleeping circuits, oceans are almost black, with only thin lines of ships. The clouds move in slow white swirls that no one down there thinks about, but from up here they look calm and certain, as if the planet is breathing. So you sit inside that calm, inside the body of Ambassador Jonah Reid, held in a padded seat by a simple belt, feeling the slight hum of the small shuttle that is carrying him to something much larger. He keeps his palms flat on his thighs, fingers open, not curled into fists, shoulders loose, jaw soft. He reminds himself, though the words never reach his lips. 4 counts. Hold. 4. Out. 4. The world outside the window shrinks as the shuttle rises. New York's familiar grid of light thins and bends with the curve of the coast. The continent becomes a mass of faint gold veins against deep blue. Then sunlight touches the edge of the planet, spreading slowly like paint across the rim. "Ambassador," the shuttle pilot says from the front. Her voice is light, cheerful, like someone trying not to disturb a sleeping house. Docking with the UES Ashen Reliquary in 12 minutes. Stable approach. "Thank you," Jonah answers. His voice sounds like he wants it to sound. Level, warm, not too loud. Tired people in distant news studios have called this his night channel tone. It came from years of practice, breathing through exams, meetings, and, later, first calls with alien envoys. "Are you sure about this ship?" the pilot adds, risking the question. "They say it's old." He looks back out at the dark, then up where distant shapes move as faint glows. Civilization as soft points of light. "We chose it for a reason," Jonah says. He does not explain the reason to her. He barely lets himself explain it to himself. The Ashen Reliquary appears ahead first as a tiny point on the shuttle's overlay. A label. USA Ashen Reliquary. Clearance a Pro. As the shuttle draws closer, the point becomes a shape, and the shape becomes a ship. Most human ships he has seen in the last decade are smooth and pale, plates fused so tightly that even seams are hard to spot. They shine in the sun, polished by systems that never sleep. This ship does not shine. The Ashen Reliquary looks like an old cargo hauler dragged out of some forgotten yard. Its hull is dark and dull, more brown than gray. Long patches of plating are uneven. Some sections carry deep dents, others carry scratched seals that circle small raised nodes. Here and there, faint lines of some old repair job cut across original metal like scars. There are no flowing fins, no curved energy sails, no mirrored domes. "Rust ship," the pilot mutters under her breath, forgetting her mic is still on. Jonah hears, but he does not react. His chest stays loose. His breathing stays steady. The word is not exactly wrong. Even the official technical record had used polite phrases to hide the same idea. Legacy hull, non-standard alloy, unmapped microstructure. The docking clamp comes with a soft clunk. Status lights turn green. Gravity adjusts in a slow, kind roll, so that his stomach barely notices. "You're clear to transfer," the pilot says. "Good luck up there, Ambassador." "Thank you," he repeats, unbuckling. As he stands, his knees feel steady. Years of training on spinning stations and ships have given his body a certain quiet confidence. In false gravity, only his heart moves faster than he would like, but he rides the feeling like a passing wave and waits for it to settle. The shuttle's inner door opens onto a short tunnel that leads into the Ashen Reliquary. The air in the tunnel smells different from the clean, brushed scent of modern docks. There is a faint trace of oil and old metal, like walking into a long-used workshop or a shipyard warehouse. It is not unpleasant. It just feels lived in. At the end of the tunnel, the ship's inner hatch slides aside, revealing a tall woman in a dark uniform. Captain Elise Ward, Ambassador. She says, with a small nod. Her hair is tied back in a simple band. There are a few gray lines along her temples, and faint crease marks at the corners of her eyes that hint at many long nights. Welcome aboard the Ashen Reliquary. Captain Jonah answers. Thank you for having me. You say that like it's a dinner invite, she replies. Dry amusement, lifting one corner of her mouth. Come on. We're on schedule. Your quarters are ready. Briefing starts in 40 minutes. He steps into the ship. The floor plates are solid underfoot, but they are not smooth. Some panels carry old scratches. The walls have handholds fitted along them, the older kind that look like simple bars welded into place, not the sleek recessed grips on newer craft. Labels are printed in clear black letters, not glowing light ribbon displays. I thought they retired all ships from this class, Jonah says as they walk together down the main corridor. They did, Elise answers. She was kept under the Strategic Heritage Act. That's what the papers say, anyway. And what do you say? He asks. Elise runs her fingertips briefly over a nearby bulkhead as they pass. But someone in the council liaison office wanted a strong symbol of human endurance for this trial. Her tone makes the quotes clear. And someone higher up approved. Small root signs mark directions. Bridge, core, quarters, shuttle, lock. The metal here carries a faded seal in a circle around a small raised node. The seal's lines have been run over by tools or time, but the shape still shows, a star with broken rays. Jonah glances at it, his brow bending. Elise follows his gaze. Her jaw tightens, just a little, older than the fleets anyone talks about in public, she says. Keep walking, Ambassador. The station's not going to wait for us. He lets the question rest. Naval history has many holes, especially around the era humans call the First Cataclysm. Books jump from a peaceful set of early colonies to a later time full of treaties and recovery. On public feeds, people slide over that gap like it is boring. Yet this ship carries marks from inside that gap. His quarters are small but clean. A simple bunk. In simple bunk is in a narrow metal desk, a soft light that he can dim with a touch. A soft light that he can dim with a touch. The window is a narrow strip, enough to show the stars and soon the Galactic station. Elise stands in the doorway for a moment, watching him scan the room. I read your file, she says. New York, street kid, more or less. Scholarships. So's diplomacy instead of private contracts. Is that in the file? he asks, or did you guess the street kid part? She smiles. You look like you know how to sleep on a train. I do, he admits. Good. This will feel similar. Try to rest a little before we dock. The Worthiness trial is a show. You will be on display from the moment we enter their field. He sits on the edge of the bunk. You've seen it before, once, as an observer. Her eyes shift past him to the small window. They say it is fair. They say it is tradition. I say it is a stage for older powers to laugh at younger ones. You still took the job, Jonah says. I took the ship, she answers. The job follows the ship. Remember that when they laugh. The door closes with a soft hiss. He leans back on the bunk, leaving his boots on. Through the narrow glass, he can already see a faint, strange shape far off. The Galactic Council station. It starts as a circle of light around a blue-white star, then gains detail. A ring made of many linked sections, each glowing faintly on its inner edge. Long docks extend outward, like the teeth of a wheel. Traffic lines in soft colors flow toward it, from every direction, ships of every shape, from thin silver spears to wide translucent wedges. The ashen reliquary approaches on a set path marked for it by the station's control grid. The hum under his body deepens as the ship's engines adjust. Then settles again. He closes his eyes. In sinks, 4, hold, 4, out, 4. He remembers the first time he saw truly alien life on a public feed. He was 16. The school auditorium was full. The image on the screen showed a tall, many-limbed being standing under a dome of soft blue light, its skin like a thin, flexible stone covered in tiny moving lights, the narrator had said. This is not the past. This is now. Humanity has neighbors. Fear had run through the room like a cold wind, but he had felt something else underneath the fear. Not excitement, not panic, something like duty. It had felt wrong to let fear run the story. He decided that day that he would learn how to keep his voice steady while facing things that made other people shake. Now, years later, that skill feels less like a career choice and more like a responsibility. A soft tone sounds in his cabin. Ambassador Elise's voice comes through the speaker. We are on final approach. Council docking in 20 minutes. Meeting in the forward observation lounge in 5 dress formal. He opens his eyes. His formal suit is a deep midnight blue, almost black, with a simple silver line at the collar. No medals, no symbols. The only clear mark is a small earth and moon emblem at his left cuff. He looks at it for a long second. Then he stands, straightens the suit, and heads for the door. The forward observation lounge is not large. It might once have been a crew rest area. Its walls show the same faded seals as the rest of the ship. But the outer wall is almost all transparent now, upgraded with a wide view panel that curves slightly overhead. Through it, the Galactic Council station fills the sky. Up close, the ring is massive. Each segment is a city-sized block with its own lights, ports, and fields. Tiny dots moving along the outer rim resolve into ships sliding into dock, guided by a faint shimmer of force. The blue-white star that the station orbits burns, just off to the side, edged by the bright colors of a nearby nebula. Soft pink, pale green, slow swirls of glowing gas that make the whole scene feel like it hangs in some careful display. Elise stands with her hands clasped behind her back, watching. Beside her are 3 other humans. A young communications officer named Rhea, her dark hair in a tight knot, an older technical specialist, Mason, with calloused hands, and a counselor from Earth, Dr. Technical Specialist. Mason, with calloused hands, Lena Osei, who will help read alien body signals during the trial. "All right," Elise says, turning just enough to include Jonah in her gaze as he steps in. "We all know the formal script. We all know the council rules. But I want to say this out loud once before we pass inside their law sphere. Remember, we are here to present calm, not to win a fight." Mason snorts softly. Hard to win a fight in this old crate anyway. Rhea elbows him gently. "Show some respect. She's carrying us." Mason pats the metal wall beside him. "I respect that. She's holding together. I just wish they'd armored her again before sending us into a show." Jonah looks up at the ring as it grows larger on the view. The sleek alien ships gliding into their docks look like fish made of light compared to the ashen reliquary's rough shape. "They will mock the hull," Jonah says. His tone is matter of fact, not bitter. "We expect that. It is part of their ritual, part of their fun," Elise corrects. "But yes," Dr. Osei adjusts her cuff display. "They especially enjoy doing it in front of younger species' public feeds," she says. "It sends a message. We are kind enough to let you join us, but do not think you are equal. And we are responding by showing up in something that looks like debris," Mason says. "Symbolism," Rhea sighs. "Humans love symbolism." Jonah does not say that not all the symbolism is public. Officially, the Ashen Reliquary was chosen to show that humans honor their past, that they see strength in survival rather than shine. Unofficially, there were other files. Quiet ones about certain old alloys, certain marks, and certain forgotten warnings in hidden parts of the Council's archives. He had read those files in a secure room, the air cold around him, his hand steady as he signed off on the mission. "You understand this ship could carry old triggers," the briefing officer had said. "I understand," Jonah had answered. "And I also understand that leaving such things hidden and never spoken of is how mistakes repeat." Now, as the giant ring station opens a docking slot for them, slot 47A lighting up in amber, he lets that memory slide away. Focus on the present. In 4. Hold 4. Out 4. Docking with the station feels different from docking with a human port. The pull comes not just from physical clamps, but from a field that reaches out and takes their motion, slowing them with strange, even grace. A faint tingling moves through Jonah's teeth as the field settles. Docking complete. Raya reports from a side console. Council clearance granted. Trial sequence confirmed for standard order. Arrival, inspection, judgment, demonstration. Mason mutters. You mean they shoot at us? Low power, Raya reminds him. Nobody answers. That Elise straightens her uniform. Ambassador, council guides are waiting at the inner docking arm. We walk in formation. Keep your breathing slow. Let them set the pace. They like to feel in control. That's convenient, Jonah says softly. So do I. Her eyes hold his for a second. Small smile, good. Then this will go smoothly. The station's air is cooler than the ship's. The docking arm from slot 47A is wide, with a ceiling higher than any human dock Jonah has walked through. The walls are made of some pale, smooth material that glows gently, with lines of shifting color that mark status and direction in dozens of languages at once. Alien guides wait ahead. The nearest is tall and thin, with a long, flexible neck and a head like a smooth oval. Its skin is a deep blue-green, broken by pale stripes that pulse slowly. It stands on 3 legs that end in splayed pads. 4 smaller arms hang at chest height, folded in a calm pose. This is a member of the Thalari, one of the Council's older species. Ambassador Jonah Reid of Sol Origin Humanity, the guide says. Its voice is soft but clear, produced by a small device. At its throat, welcome to the Galactic Council Central Station. Thank you, Jonah says, offering a slight bow. We are honored to attend. The guide's upper arms shift in what Dr. Osi's briefing had called a sign of polite acceptance. Your vessel is registered as UES Ashen Reliquary, classified as antique hull. This is unusual for a worthiness trial. It is an old ship, Jonah says, keeping his tone open, almost casual. She has seen a lot. We felt it fitting to bring something that carries our history with us. As you wish, the guide says. A tiny flicker of colored light passes over a small badge at its side as it sends a private report to the station systems. Please follow. The council chamber is prepared. They move through wide halls where beings of many shapes pass by. Some pause to look at the humans. Jonah feels dozens of eyes, lenses, and other sensors slide over their small group. Up above, clear sections of the ceiling show glimpses of the station's inner spaces. Gardens under strange suns, zero-gravity chamber spheres where floating shapes drift in slow patterns, transit rings that move people in beams of colored light. But what draws most attention even here is the Ashen Reliquary. Through long viewing strips, Jonah can see other ships docked along the ring. They glow, curve, and shine. Their hulls look almost alive, controlled by smooth fields that dance along their sides. And then there is the human dock, where a single dark dented form hangs, clamped in place. Some aliens stop to point at it, limbs moving in signs of surprise or laughter. Jonah does not look away. This is part of the trial. The council chamber is a great circular hall with layered seats, that rise into the distance like a soft bowl. The floor in the center is flat and empty, marked by a simple glowing ring. Above, a high dome shows a projection of the station's outer view. The star, the nebula, the traffic. As the humans step onto the floor, a low wave of sound moves through the hall. Not the banned word, but a shift. Clicks, pulses, tones from many throats and devices. Jonah walks with his shoulders back, but his stance relaxed. Elise and the others move a step behind him. They reach a marked spot and stop. At the far edge of the circle, a raised platform holds the council heads. Their forms differ, but their seats are aligned on the same level. Among them is a thick-bodied being, skin like polished stone, with 4 massive arms and a crown of sensory spines that flare outward. Council Marshal Silo Tess. Xylos people are known for their control of military forces around the council. Their ships form much of the station's defense grid. Their voices carry weight in any discussion of strength and safety. Humanity of soul, a neutral announcer voice says from the hall's center acoustic system. Welcome to your Worthiness trial. Lights soften across the hall, then refocus on Jonah. Your envoy has arrived aboard a ship, classified as rusted relic, the announcer continues. There is a flicker of humor in the tone that is not strictly polite. This choice has surprised many. Soft laughter moves through the seats. Jonah lifts his chin slightly. This ship has served long and survived much, he says, his words carried and translated by hidden systems. We felt it honors the purpose of this trial to stand here not with polished image, but with stable endurance. On the raised platform, Exilo Tess leans forward. Endurance, their voice booms. Devices carry it, giving it a deep weight. Your vessel looks as if a modest solar flare might turn it to dust. More laughter. We trust her, Elise says quietly behind Jonah, not into any mic, but he hears and feels strength in it. Jonah lets the laughter pass. He does not try to talk over it. When it fades, he speaks again, still calm. Our ship carries scars, he says. So does every species in this hall, in its own way. We have chosen not to hide ours. Across the chamber, a different figure shifts. A tall, broad-shouldered alien with pale, almost white skin crossed by darker markings. Admiral Varick, his eyes, large, with vertical pupils, are locked on Jonah, but then drift to the display behind him, where a live feed of the ashen reliquary hangs over the chamber, turning slowly to show its battered sides. Varick's pupils narrow. Those marks, he says softly into his personal channel, meant for nearby counselors. Pause the rotation. Zoom section G12. The display responds. A part of the human hull fills it, a dented area with a circular seal, partly scraped around a small raised node. Varick leans toward a companion, voice low but tight. That is not standard human work. That is first cataclysm seal pattern, variant 9. How does a young race carry a hull marked by a war older Then their record, his companion, a smaller, insect-like counselor, clicks softly. Perhaps you misremember. Records of that era are broken. My memory is not broken, Ferric replies. Down below, on the central floor, Jonah cannot hear their exchange. He only feels the gaze from above. Marshal Xylo Tess waves a heavy hand. Regardless, Xylo says the Worthiness trial is clear. Your vessel will face controlled fire to measure its defenses and your species' response. We will judge not only your strength, but your respect for law, and your ability to accept humiliation without chaos. The last word hangs in the air. Jonah knows many young species have failed. At that last part, we understand the terms, he says. Humanity is ready. Then let the first phase proceed, the announcer declares. Ship inspection complete, judgment reserved. Demonstration to begin in the external test field. Lights adjust. The display behind Jonah shifts from the chamber view to an image of the station's outer space, where a marked arena sits just beyond the ring. A clear bubble zone with faint lines of force that will hold and track the upcoming test. Inside that bubble, the Ashen Reliquary's dark hull begins to move, guided by station tugs toward the center. Alien ships glide into place at the bubble's edge, sleek, bright. Armed from the seats above, the laughter softens into a kind of greedy attention. They expect a show. Jonah stands on the council floor, feeling the faint vibration of distant engines through the station's bones, and lets his breathing slow again. In, 4, hold, out, 4. The old ship that carries him, that carries all of you right now, hangs alone in the middle of the trial field. From inside the Ashen Reliquary, the test field feels like a wide, silent room. Jonah stands on the small bridge, ringed by consoles that look older than many museums back on Earth. The seats are manual. Switches have physical toggles. Screens show simple but clear graphics in soft blues and greens, updated over the years, but still framed by old metal. Through the forward view panel, space opens in every direction, held by a faint spherical shimmer, the boundary of the Council's controlled arena. Outside that shimmer, 5 alien cruisers form a loose circle. Each is different in shape and design, built by a different species, but all of them look new and strong compared to the Ashen Reliquary. The nearest is long and thin, its hull silver white, with lines of glowing blue that run along its sides like veins. Its weapons pods are smooth, almost invisible, but Jonah knows they can focus beams tight enough to slice asteroids. Test field stable, Raya reports from the comms chair, her fingers quick on the controls. All data paths open. Council monitors confirm. Low power setting for round 1. Navigation locked. Mason adds, glancing at his readouts, were held by their field. No dodge, no drift, or a fixed target. Elise stands behind Jonah's right shoulder, one hand lightly resting on the back of his chair. The other hand hangs relaxed by her side, but Jonah can see the small movement of her thumb, a habit from combat drills. like half of a grip. They want us to stand still, she says, so they can measure hull response only, not pilot skill. Is that comforting? Mason asks. Not really. Jonah keeps his gaze on the nearest cruiser. A small symbol flashes near its bow, charge ready. A soft chime rings through their own bridge. This is Council Marshal Command. A formal voice comes through the main speaker. Round 1 demonstration of outer hull integrity under low-level, non-lethal energy fire. No active defenses permitted. No signal. Jamming. Confirm compliance. Elise answers, clear and firm. Human vessel UES. A Shen reliquary. Compliance confirmed. Jonah feels a small urge to speak, to say something about trust and fairness. He sets it aside. This part is not about words. Outside, the first cruiser's weapon pods glow. A thin beam of pale light forms, then lances across the test field. It hits the Ashen reliquary's hull, just forward of the bridge. There should be sparks. Heat shimmers. Some show of harm. Instead, the beam sinks in like rain on dark soil. The old metal darkens slightly around the impact point. The light from the beam spreads over the hull in a slow, strange pattern, like water soaking into thick cloth, then vanishes. The hull looks the same. No smoke, no fracture lines. On the bridge, there is a moment of pure silence. Hull temp rise 3 degrees, Mason says at last, staring at his display. Stress within safe range. That's it. Raya frowns. The council feed is asking for internal damage reports. They don't believe the external reading. Send them what we have, Elise orders. Show them everything, no tricks. Rhea taps the commands. Done. Internal sensors confirm. No damage. Only a small stored energy load in the outer alloy layer. Another beam fires from a different cruiser. It hits the hull near a cluster of old seal marks. Again, the energy spreads and vanishes, leaving only a faint darkening. This time, Jonah feels something else, not through his body, but through the deck plates. Under his feet, a tiny slow shift, like the ship is taking a deeper breath than usual in. 4, he thinks without meaning to. Hold. 4. Out. His breathing and that slow sense from the hull line up for a moment, then drift apart. Are we sure the self-healing layer was fully mapped? He asks quietly. We ran tests in Sol orbit. High, but not extreme. The alloy soaked up small hits, spread the force, released it as heat and safe radiation later. Nothing special, just good design. Those tests were under human control. Dr. Stess were under human control. Ose says from the back, where she watches not the ship, but live feeds of the council chamber. Her screen shows alien faces leaning forward. This is under theirs. The council voice returns on the main speaker. Round 1 complete. Hull integrity holds. Human vessel shows unexpected energy absorption capacity. Noted. Round 2. Elevated fire. Medium level non-lethal beams. Confirm compliance. Elise looks at Jonah. He meets her eyes, then nods once. Compliance confirmed, she says. Outside, all 5 cruisers shift. Their weapon arrays extend or brighten. This time, when they fire, the beams are thicker, more intense. Colors vary. Blue, green, white, but all converge on the ashen reliquary. 5 hits in quick order. The hull takes them. From the bridge, the crew can see faint, glowing paths spread out from each impacts. Lines of light run along old dents and seal marks, tracing patterns that no one here has a name for. The glow is soft, almost gentle. Now that is not from any human shipyard I know. Mason breathes. Hull temp rise. 12 degrees. Rhea reports. Outer layer charge. Increasing. Internal structure stress. Still within range. No breaches. No cracks. Jonah's hands rest on the arms of his chair. His fingers feel a low hum, deeper than the normal engine vibration. It is like feeling a cat purr through a floor. Do you feel that? He asks. Elise moves her palm to a nearby bulkhead. Closes her eyes for a second. Yes, she's storing more than she releases. That wasn't in the last test logs. Maybe Council beams use different phasing, Mason suggests. Different interaction with the alloy. Maybe, Elise says, but her eyes are narrow now, focused. On Dr. Osei's screen, the Council chamber shows mixed reactions. Some aliens look pleased, others annoyed. Marshal Xylo Tess leans forward, huge arms resting on the platform edge. They expected us to smoke by now, Dr. Osei says, or at least to show panic. Marshal Xylo looks bored. They wanted us to flinch, Jonah replies. We did not. Far above in the council seats, Admiral Varric watches not the humans, but the hull. The live feed zooms in on the glowing paths. There, he says quietly, look at the pattern around node cluster C4. That is a legacy node, I am certain. His insect-like companion shakes its small head. Legacy of what? The first cataclysm records are sealed. Even you are not allowed full access. I had more access than most, Varric answers. His voice feels old, even to himself. Those marks were made by a fleet that turned whole fronts of that war. The doctrine was simple: protect agreed envoys at any cost. The metal remembers. The companion clicks nervously. You cannot be sure this is the same. I hope I am wrong, Varric says. For their sake, for all our sakes. Back in the test field, the council voice comes again. Round 2 complete. Human hull continues to absorb. Unexpected resilience bordering on anomaly. Round 3 authorized. High-level, near-lethal beams at controlled duration. Confirm compliance. A soft murmur runs through the human bridge. Near lethal, Mason says. That means they can actually crack us now, Alice's jaw tightens. Trial limits say they must stop at first. Sign of hull failure, she says. In theory. In theory, Mason repeats. All eyes turn to Jonah. His breathing is slow, but he can feel a tightness starting behind his ribs. Not fear, exactly, but the awareness that they are moving toward a line no one can fully see. He thinks of the secure files, the warning that certain patterns of focused fire near a human envoy could trigger old systems hidden in ancient alloys. He thinks of Earth, calm and far away, with its city lights and quiet faces watching news later, not knowing how close they came to something they will never see. If we refuse, he says softly, they call us weak. They lower our rank. They close doors. If we accept, Elise says, we risk pressing whatever this hull is hiding. Silence. Except for the hum. Jonah inhales. Counts. In, 4, hold, 4, out. 4 his lungs obey. The tightness eases, just enough for him to think. Clearly, this ship was chosen with full knowledge of its unknowns, he says. We came here to stop pretending those unknowns do not exist. If we flinch now, we send the wrong message to them and to ourselves. Elise studies him for a long, quiet second. Then she nods once. She turns to the mic. Human vessel UES Ashen Reliquary. Compliance confirmed. Dr. Osei closes her eyes for a moment, as if centering something inside herself. Mason mutters something that might be a quick, quiet prayer. Raya's fingers hover over her console, ready to report. Outside, the 5 alien cruisers shift again. Their beams charge brighter than before, growing thick, focused, sharp. The test field boundary glows in response, reinforcing itself to contain the power. On the council chamber display, the arena lights dim around the edges to draw all attention to the center. Marshal Xylo Tess raises a heavy hand. Begin. Xylo orders. 5 beams fire at once. They slam into the Ashen Reliquary's hull with more force than anything it has taken in centuries. The view panel filters flare and adjust to keep the light from blinding the bridge crew. The metal does not shatter. It bends. Jonah feels the deck shift under his feet, a low, slow stretch rather than a sharp jolt. The hull glows along every old dent and seal mark now, lines of light connecting nodes into a network that wraps the ship. Hull temp spike, 38 degrees and climbing. Raya shouts over the hum. Outer layer charge, saturating. I've never seen numbers like this. Any fractures? Elise demands. None, Mason says, eyes wide. Stress grid shows full flex, no breaks. It's as if the metal is adjusting itself. Through the view, they can see the scars glow brighter, then settle into steady patterns like circuits waking up. Under Jonah's hands, the chair arms vibrate. Not random shaking, but a steady pulsing rhythm. He feels a presence, not a mind in the way he knows minds. More like a set of rules coming into focus. The beams outside start to thin as the cruisers hold their fire at the edge of the near-lethal setting. waiting to see cracks. There are no cracks. Instead, something unseen crosses a line inside the alloy. A small, sharp chime sounds from a panel that no one has touched. A display that had been dark since the ship left human docks flares to life on the forward console. 9 status. Dormant as cessing. Ria's mouth falls open. What is that? That panel wasn't even in the schematics. Mason leans forward. HELIO-9. I've never. The text on the display shifts. 9 legacy node online. Hostile mass fire. Pattern detected. Environment. Envoy presence. Confirmed. Procula. Protective Doctor Prime. A soft tone pulses through the hull. Jonah feels it in his bones. Outside, the glowing patterns on the ship's scars tighten, as if the metal is bracing for something beyond simple defense. On the council station, alarms begin to light in Ferric's private console. Unknown signal detected, and aid reports. Origin, human vessel. Direction, outward, beyond local space lane grid. Narrow beam, deep range. Ferric's blood runs cold. Trace it, he snaps. Now, the aid's limbs move in a blur. Signal is a handshake. Encrypted in a very old format. Destination, unclear. It appears to be aimed at nothing. Empty space. Nothing is empty, Ferric says. Not where those seal marks came from. On the Ashen Reliquary's bridge. Jonah stares at the new display. Another line appears. Legacy fleet status. Dormant Tocton, he says. Voice low but steady. I think we have just crossed a line. Ellis's eyes are fixed on the same words. Outside, beyond the council's neat maps and bright lanes, in a dark curve of orbit hidden behind the glare of the nebula, something stirs. Shapes that were rocks among rocks shift slightly. Old hulls, black against black, begin to glow with faint, returning power. The Ashen Reliquary's scars shine like tiny stars. The first shots of the Council's trial fade. But the real test has only just begun. The sound on the bridge is a deep, steady hum now. Not the usual engine note. This is lower, fuller. Like some huge machine, far below the floor, has started to turn for the first time in ages. HELI. said 9 legacy node online. The new panel reads, status. Assessing threat. The words look simple, almost boring, but Jonah feels a weight behind them. Years, centuries, lock that feed. Local record only. Do not let the council see it until we say so. Yes, Captain. Ria's fingers jump. I've cut the external telemetry from that console. Council still sees hull data, but not this panel. Mason stares. This shouldn't even be here, he mutters. We scanned this bridge. We mapped every active circuit. That display was dead. It woke with the alloy, Jonah says, quietly, through the forward view. The Council cruiser's beams thin and shut off as round 3 ends. The test field shines faintly, then returns to its normal low glow. The ashen reliquary hangs still in the center, its scars and seal marks lit with soft light. The main speaker crackles, round 3 complete. The Council voice announces, "There is a strange tone, now tight, not amused. Human vessel remains intact under near-lethal fire. This behavior is irregular. Council analysis teams request full internal scan data for review. Internal data will be provided," Elise answers, her voice level. "We are as interested in this hull response as you, Marshal." Jonah imagines Xylotess's heavy face, confused that the humans are not panicking. 9 panel, new lines appear. Environmental input. As high energy fire, det ted, envoy, life cygnus. Present, local authority. Unrecognized, doctrine check. Premin conditions met. Responses. Preparing defense. Defense lattice, Mason says. What does that mean? Rias' eyes are wide. Am reading tiny field shifts along the hull. Micro generators we didn't know we had. Power flow is rerouting through old conduits. It's making something around us. Like a shield? Dr. Osei asks. More than a simple shield, Ria says. It's layered, complex, and it's not taking orders from me. On the Council station, alarms continue to brighten around. Admiral, an aide calls. We have traced that handshake signal. It matches patterns from sealed First Cataclysm archives, old human channels. Farrak's throat goes dry. Origin confirmed as the human hull? Yes. The signal repeated 3 times, then shifted to a silent mode. We see a distant response near the dark orbit region behind the nebula. Farrak's eyes flick to the main chamber display. The ashen reliquary's glowing marks look almost pretty from here. Like decorations, the legacy doctrine, he says. Under his breath, his insect-like companion tilts its head. You are certain this is that old human program? I sat on the review board when we buried those files, Farrak replies. We thought the fleet was gone. Lost. We were wrong. In the main council chamber, Marshal Xylotess raises a massive hand for silence. The human hull stands, Exilo says. This proves surprising endurance. But a test is not finished just because a subject survives 3 rounds. We must also see how control holds under stress. Marshal, a softer voice says from a seat nearby. The formal trial design has only 3 standard rounds. More could be seen as Bren. Harassment. Swilo spines flare. We are not harassing. We are clarifying. Look at that ship. It holds more than it shows. I want to see if it bleeds. The chamber stirs. Farrak stands, Marshal Xylo, he says, his voice strong despite his age. Before you order more fire, we must speak privately. There is history here you do not understand. Xylo turns their heavy head. Sit, Admiral. Your caution is known. Ferric does not sit. That hull is marked with legacy seals from the first cataclysm, he says. Loud enough that many seats catch the words. There is a risk that, I said. Sit, Xylo snaps. Your old wars are stories told to fearful children. This is a controlled trial, not a battlefield. Ferric's jaw clenches. Your pride blinds you. Xylo's spines stiffen in anger. Around them some counselors shift, uneasy. Others look entertained. The announcer voice cuts in, trying to smooth things. Council discussion noted. Martial authority over trial remains in place. On the Ashen Reliquary, the crew hears only the official part when the speaker crackles again. Additional firing rounds are under consideration. The council voice says, "Hold position. Wait further orders." Additional rounds. Rhea repeats. They're changing the script. Mason says, "Because we didn't break on cue." Dr. Osei looks up from her feet. Marshal Xylo is angry. Some counselors are nervous. Admiral Varric is arguing, but they're pushing him aside. Elisa's mouth thins. Angry people with guns, she says, and an old hull waking in response. This is a bad mix. On the HELIO-9 display, more lines of text appear. Authority query, query query, authority query. Ferent CO call, doctrine record. Marshal rank, not bound to prime control. Prime and foy, human foy, human foy, human foy, human foy, human. Human hazo detected. For status, however, invoice under direct fire threat. Doctoron result. External authority. Overridden. Protective autonomy engaged. Jonah swallows. It's not listening to the council, he says. It only cares about envoys and fire. Dr. Osei steps closer, eyes on the panel. HELIO-9, she says, voice carefully calm, as if speaking to a shy animal. Can you hear us? For a moment, nothing changes. Then new words scroll across the bottom of the display. Elkal, human. Input, received. Identity, unferifid, priority, low during, active threat. Acroyority, low during active 3, so it can hear, Mason says. Kind of, but we're not important yet. Rhea taps a key in trying to query it with ship command codes. She frowns, no response. It's using a different layer than our normal systems. Separate. Elise takes a slow breath. All right, she says. Let's assume for now that HELI-9 is going to do what it was built to do. Protect envoys from massed fire. That means if the Council escalates, this ship may react in ways we cannot fully control. And that handshake to dark orbit, Jonah asks, you think it already did more than react? Outside, beyond the Council's neat maps and bright lanes, in a dark curve of orbit hidden behind the glare of the nebula, something stirs. Shapes that were rocks among rocks shift slightly. Old hulls, black against black, begin to glow with faint, returning power. Under the dust and ice, smooth armor appears, dark and dull, like the ashen reliquary's hull. Faint lights run along its sides. Sensor masts lift from folded grooves. Old markings glow, circles around raised nodes, connected by lines. Gaze connected by lines. Elsewhere, a larger bulk shifts. Gravity waves ripple out as hidden mass slides into new balance. A ship the size of a small moon turns to face the Council station. Its engines wake with a low flare that local sensors would call background noise, if they were looking in the right place. HELIO 9 Legacy Fleet Link. Active, the panel on the Ashen Reliquary reads. Remote status. Guard formation individualizing. Fleet Octronon, protect envoy group. Neutralize hostile fire, Sauerson's if threat. Persist. Jonah feels his throat go dry. Show me outside, he says. Rhea nods, fingers moving. The forward view shifts, pulling back, stretching perspective until the test field becomes a small bubble beside the huge station ring. Stars scatter across the black. At first, all looks normal. Then, as the image brightens and zooms, dark shapes appear where there had been only blankness. At least a dozen, maybe more. They are not close. They sit on the far curve of space behind the nebula, half hidden by glowing gas. But as the camera filters adjust, their lines become clear, old warships. Long spears of metal, with heavy clusters along their spines. Disc-shaped hulls with faint rings of dim running lights. Chunky, layered crafts like floating fortresses. All are facing the Council station. All are waking. Mason breathes a curse. Osei whispers, dark orbit wasn't empty at all. Elise does not move. Her eyes are locked. On the nearest of the legacy ships, a wide, flat shape with 4 massive engine clusters. Those aren't in any living fleet, she says. They're bigger than anything anyone builds now. And they're ours. Jonah studies them, feeling a cold weight settle in his chest. They were ours, he says. Before our history books began, Rhea's console flares with new messages. Council sensors just picked them up, she says. Traffic nets are lighting like crazy. Emceeing emergency channels. They're calling it an unidentified battle group. On the Council station, panic starts to rise. Marshal. Shouts a voice over Xylo-TASS's private link. Unidentified capital ships appearing behind the nebula. Count. 14 and increasing. Configuration unknown. They match no known Navy registry. Swilos eyes, narrow. Origin, dark orbit, the voice answers. hidden mass pockets. We thought they were empty. Ferric pushes forward, no longer caring about decorum. Those are human legacy fleet vessels, he says. Old auto warships. You have triggered them. Xylo swings their heavy gaze toward him. You dare say this is my doing? You fired on an envoy ship with extreme power. Ferric replies. Their doctrine is clear. Protect envoys under massed attack. They will not ask for your opinion. The chamber buzzes with tense sounds. What is their command channel? Why signal? Demands. We will contact them, order them to stand down. They do not answer council orders, Ferric says. They answer only to their own node logic and to human envoys directly. That was the treaty after the first cataclysm. You would know this if you had read the sealed files instead of calling them children's stories. Xylo's spines flatten in anger and fear. Get me a channel to that human ship. They growl now. On the Ashen Reliquary's bridge, the main speaker chimes sharply. Human vessel, the council announcer says, but the voice is tight now, strained. We require immediate clarification. Our outer sensors have detected an incoming fleet linked to your hull's hidden systems. Explain at once. Jonah looks at Elise. Her face is pale, but steady. We will respond, she says, but we do it carefully. OC touches her wrist. Marshal Xylo is scared, she says. Eyes on her feet. Scared people with power tend to hit things. HELIO. Square. People with power tend to her. 9, Jonah says softly, turning back to the strange new panel. Can you hear me? The text shifts. A locale human input. Received IDNT. When for if it. Query state. Designation. Jonah hesitates. Then speaks clearly, as if introducing himself to any other delegate. I am Ambassador Jonah Reid of Soul Origin Humanity, he says, prime envoy for this Worthiness trial. I represent human civilian law. The reply is almost instant. Cross-reference. Ambassador matches. Ambassador matches. Ambassador. Matches legacy. Rank. Envoy. Cross-reference. Jonah Reid not found in core doctrine. Age discrepancy. 1,000 years. Logic. New envoy. Instance. Status. Recognized to priority of input. Elevated to prima locale. Rhea lets out a short, shocked laugh. It just accepted you. Good, Elise says, because we need to talk it down. On the panel, a new block of text opens. Like a doorway. HELIO 9 interface. Envoy state. Surrent threat interpretation. Jonah glances at Elise. She nods. Dr. Osei gives him a small, firm look that says, control your voice. He inhales 4 counts, holds, releases. HELIO 9, he says. The current situation is a controlled test, not an act of war. The council's firing was part of an agreed trial. Their intention was not to destroy, but to measure. Then, anal, sis, energy levels, stream, fire pattern and mass fire from multiple vessels, Fox Dawn, Envoy, whole, control, STR, non-binded authority, council marshal, envoy consent, unquaiconon peror to engage, preliminary verdict, conditions match hostile prial 0.87, auto defense, doctrine requires high readiness state. You need to be more precise, Dr. Osei murmurs. Treat it like a legal system. It's following rules. HELIO-9, Jonah says, choosing each word. Update, envoy consent was present. We knew the trial included controlled fire. We agreed to it under written terms. The firing has now stopped. No further shots have been taken. The environment is under formal law, not open war. The panel flashes. New data. Concerned flagged added. Checking doctrine acceptance. On the forward view, the legacy ships in dark orbit continue to move. They form a wide arc behind the station, staying just outside the outer defense grid. Their engines stay at low burn, but their noses track gently, lining up possible lines of fire. On the council station, panic shifts into coordination. Defense ships launch from hidden bays, moving into a screen between the station and the approaching old fleet. Their hulls shine, polished and sharp. Marshal, a defense officer, says, "We can form a protective shell and signal readiness. If they open fire, we answer." "No," Ferrick says sharply. "If you shoot, the legacy fleet will count that as hostile fire as well. Their doctrine will mark you as enemy sources. They are built to fight large wars, Marshal, not skirmishes, not shows. So we sit and let them close around us?" Bylai snaps. "No," Ferrick says. "We let the humans talk to their own ghosts." In the chamber, all eyes go to the central floor, where Jonah's small human figure stands, watching the feeds from his ship. Watching the feeds from his ship, Ambassador Jonah Reid. The announcer calls, struggling for calm. "The council requires your aid." "What are those ships? Why have you called them here?" Jonah's reply comes through the speakers, his voice even but firm. "We did not call them in the way you think," he says. "This hull carries an old node that responds to patterns of attack. You triggered it when you pressed your trial beyond the standard rounds. The fleet you see is an ancient human auto-defense group. Built long before our modern treaties, it recognizes envoy status and fire, not your council ranks." A murmur runs through the hall. Marshal Xylo Tess rises slowly to full height. "So you brought a hidden gun to our station," they say, voice deep with anger. "You hid its nature. You threaten us with illegal force." Ferrick lifts his hands. "No," he says. "They brought a locked weapon into a place that promised safety, and then tested that promise by letting you hit it. There is guilt here, but not as you say. In the Ashen Reliquaries Bridge, the HELIO-9 panel shows its own slow reasoning. Doctrine secti, doctors such, complete. Condistion match found. Envoy consent to controlled fire. Fire ceased, host platform. Estrugal denkery, in disease, strachic, stand down. Protocol, alpha, T empore, requires. Prime envio confirmation, plus LOK, non-fire guarantee. Elise, Jonah says. It has a stand-down option, but it needs me to confirm, and it needs a promise from the council, not to shoot again. If the council want promise, Mason says, this whole place becomes a war zone. Dr. Ose studies her screen. There is division up there, she says. Some are ready to swear off further fire, to save their skins. Xylo still wants to prove something. Admiral Varric is pushing for calm. HELIO-9, Jonah says, mind racing. Define local non-fire guarantee. Who must promise? The answer scrolls. Non-fire guarantee accepted from. Prime envoy, human. Recognized treaty authority. Sage natures, lissa zero currently. Recognized. Legacy Fleet Command Nodes. Local, cell feet. No sources. V and fastidjor for no ship. It doesn't recognize the council as an authority at all. In its memory, there was no council, Elise says. Just warring blocks and fragile envoy agreements. Then the only promise it trusts here is mine, Jonah says. And its own. Mason stares at him. You don't control the council. No, Jonah says, but maybe I can bind part of this threat anyway. He turns back to the mic. Council Marshal Xylo Tess, he says. His voice carried into the chamber. The Legacy Fleet is waking. Its core law is to protect human envoys under heavy fire. It does not care about your ranks. It does not care about your pride. It only cares about patterns. It reads as war. If you fire again on this ship, you will trigger its full doctrine. None of us want that. You will trigger its full doctrine. Then shut it down, Xylo growls. Order your machines to sleep. I am trying, Jonah says, but they come from a time before this council. Their trust of others is limited. They respond to envoy promises and their own logic. I can ask them to stand down. For that to work, you must stop your trial where it should have ended. At round 3, no more shots. No more clarifying fire. You do that, and I will call them back. From her seat, a slender, many-eyed counselor leans forward. Marshal, she says softly, listen to him. Our families are on this station. Xylo's spines twitch. They look up at the main outer view, where the dark shapes of the Legacy Fleet continue to slide into a loose screen. Admiral Varric, Xylo says at last, voice grudging. Ferric holds Silo's gaze. I believe, he says, that they were built in an age when showing force meant burning small moons. They do not bluff. They do not care about your face in front of the crowd. They will simply do their math and act. Zuilo's thick hands curl. Very well, Zuilo says, at last. By martial authority, the Worthiness trial for humanity is ended. No further fire will be used. All council vessels are ordered to hold. Record that I, Zuilo Tess, give this guarantee under full law. The announcer's voice spreads the words through the hall and into the Ashen Reliquary's speakers. Trial ended, the announcer says. No further fire authorized. Guarantee recorded. Dr. Osei glances at Jonah. They kept the word ended clear. That will help. HELIO-9, Jonah says quickly. Update. Local authority structure has ceased fire. The Worthiness trial is officially ended. As Prime Envoy, I confirm I consented to the previous controlled fire, and I now state that any further fire will be against my will and against law. I request activation of Stand-Down Protocol Alpha. Do not attack. Hold your fleet. Return them to dark orbit if conditions remain stable. The panel flashes as if thinking. New input. Envoy sets past fire as consented. LOKO broadcast. No fire or detected from multiple sources. Awaiting outside, the legacy ships pause in their slow advance. Engines dial down to a bare glow. Their lines stay pointed toward the station, but they no longer close the distance. Fleet status, high readiness hold. The panel reports. Stand down. Pratoka algae. Possible. Risks for sure fire on envoy without time to react. Loss of surprise defense advantage requires. Envoy acceptance of risk. Jonah stares at that last line. It wants you to sign a waiver, Mason says weakly. That's fair, Elise says. It was built to keep envoys safe. If you tell it to stand down and then get killed because of that, it is breaking its core duty. Dr. Osei's voice is soft. If you accept, you are telling it that peace is worth some personal danger. Jonah thinks of Earth. Again, the quiet curve. The cities, the people who never agreed to be shields in old wars. He thinks of the council station filled with families of many species. He thinks of the faces in the chamber, some mocking, some afraid, some just tired. He also thinks of the files he read about the first cataclysm, the ones that were not meant to leave that secure room. He remembers lines about fleets that acted without pause, with no room for new words, and worlds burned because no one could talk to them fast enough. In, for, he thinks. Whole, for, out. For, he feels his heart steady. HELIO-9, he says. As Prime Envoy, I accept personal risk. I order activation of Stand-Down Protocol Alpha for the Legacy Fleet. You will not fire, you will not lock targets, and you will not close distance unless new, unlawful fire is directed at this envoy group. You will then act with measured force, only focused on stopping the source, not punishing bystanders. Confirm this logic. There is a longer pause now. The panel's light flickers in a slow pattern. It feels like thinking beyond no signal permam. Absolute protection. New envoy input. Conditional protection. Plus civilian is savvy. Priority checking. Legacy. Core for flexibility. Jonah's breath stops for a second. If the core is too rigid, it might refuse any change. But then, minor flexibility found, teeth end after first catacly sem peace. APP when sequel pies, when civilian density high, envoy consonant to risk confirmed. New envoy input matches existing term. Stand down, protokin, alka, engaging. Outside, every legacy ship in dark orbit shifts again. This time their movements are small but clear. Weapons that had been slowly swinging into line, halt, and retract slightly. Engine flares dim to almost nothing. Their noses tilt just off direct aim at the station. Fleet status. Stand down, hold. Rules. No burst fire. Defense only if envio, threat, exceeds tolerance. Civilian damage to be minimized. On the council station, relief washes through the defense command decks. There, holding. A sensor officer says, "Their guns aren't locking. They're just watching." Marshal Xylo Tess releases a breath. They did not realize they were holding. Ambassador Jonah, the announcer says, and now the voice is almost respectful. "We see a change. The unknown fleet is no longer advancing. Have you done this?" In part, Jonah answers. The legacy fleet responds to me and to its own doctrine. It has agreed. As long as you do not break your word. Ferric Varick lets out a tiny, bitter laugh that only those close to him hear. "Perhaps, Marshal. Now you see why we filed those old warnings," he says. Old systems do not care about pride, only inputs. Xylo does not reply. On the Ashen reliquary, the ship scars are still glowing, but more softly now. The hum through the deck lowers in pitch, like a machine easing from full speed to a careful idle. Rhea checks her readings. Hull stress normalizing, she says. Outer layer cooling. Energy dispersal pattern looks controlled, like it decided to stop charging at some point. HELIO-9, Jonah says. Next step, I need to know more about you. Your rules. Your limits. We cannot have you sitting forever, just waiting for something to set you off. The panel responds. Envoy request. Incepted. Interface level. Raised to negation tier. Warning. Deep doctrine modification. Requires extended session. And may be rejected by core. Dr. Ose smiles. A small, tired smile. It's opening up, she says. You're not just someone it protects, Tau. You're someone it talks to. Elise crosses her arms. We'll talk later, she says to Jonah, about who thought it was a good idea to send an envoy with the power to argue with a 1,000-year-old war brain. Jonah almost smiles back. I think they hoped, he says softly, that talking would be enough. Mason sighs, and if it isn't, then old metal will do what old metal was built to do. Elise says, which is why we make very, very sure we use words well. The council voice comes again on the speaker, different now, less formal, more human. Ambassador Jonah Reid, it says, the council requests your presence in the central chamber to discuss what has happened here. You and your crew will be escorted under safe passage. All weapons have been locked to safe mode under law. Dr. Osei checks her feed. They're telling the truth, she says. Sensors show weapons along the station ring, going offline. Even Marshal Xylo's ships are healing back. Elise looks at Jonah. Do you trust them? I trust, he says slowly, that they are more afraid of those old ships than they are eager to hurt us right now. And HELIO-9, she asks, will it let you leave the hull? On the panel, as if hearing, a new line appears. Envoy movement. A load. Within. Locale. Zone. Note. Fleet will continue to monitor any hostile. Move toward envoy will be logged. Jonah nods. It will watch, he says. But it will not jump first anymore, not without reason. Elise takes a breath. All right, she says. We go. Rhea, Mason, hold the bridge. Osei, you're with the ambassador. I want someone there who can read spines and skin tones. She turns to Jonah. Remember, you are not just human to them anymore. You are the only person in this system who can speak for that fleet. They will treat you like both a guest and a bomb. I've been treated worse, Jonah says dryly. He stands. His knees feel a little weak, but his breathing is steady. He touches the back of his chair once, feeling the faint vibration still running through the metal. HELIO-9, he says quietly, not sure why he feels the need. I am leaving this room for a while. I am going to try to calm the council so they will not fear you and will not push you. Protect my crew and the station. But remember, words first, defense only if there is no other path. Do you understand? The reply is simple. Acknowledged, preference updated. Words before 4 Cs. Jonah blinks. It has a preference now, he says. Dr. Osei smiles again. Just a little. You taught it that, she says. At least for today. They leave the bridge. As they walk down the ashen reliquary's worn corridor, past old seals and faded marks, the ship feels less like a dead relic and more like a quiet animal that has opened one eye, noticed that the house is full of strangers, and decided, for now, not to bite. Outside, the legacy fleet holds its places in dark orbit, forming a protective ring behind the council station, blocking out some of the stars. They are not shining. They are not firing. They are simply there, waiting. And for the first time in 1,000 years, someone is walking into a hall of many species to speak for them, not as a soldier, not as a warlord, but as an envoy who believes that old defenses can be guided, not just feared. The alloy that slept through centuries has woken. Now the hard part begins, teaching it and everyone watching what peace really means. The council chamber feels different. Now, the great round hall is the same shape, the same rising seats, the same high dome, showing space outside. But the air feels thicker, the sounds are sharper. Fear has replaced amusement. Above, the dome display shows not just the ring and the nebula, but also the dark shapes of the legacy fleet, hanging behind the station like a second, rougher ring. They are still, silent, waiting. Down on the floor, in the center circle of light, Ambassador Jonah Reid walks to the marked spot once more. Dr. Jonah Reid walks to the marked spot once more. Ose moves at his side, her steps light but sure. 2 station guides stand just inside the edge of the circle, their limbs stiff with tension. Around them, dozens of alien eyes, lenses, and sensors watch. Jonah's palms are dry. His breathing is slow. In. 4, hold. 4, out. 4. He feels the weight of many gazes, but he also feels something else now. Like a thin line from his chest, back to the old ship, and beyond that, to the silent shapes in dark orbit. HELIO. 9 is not a person, but it is paying attention. On the raised platform, Marshal Xylo leans forward, heavy hands on the rail. Their spines are half lowered, still tense, but no longer fully flared. Beside them sits Admiral Ferric, shoulders set, markings faintly darkened in stress. The announcer's voice sounds different, less proud, more careful. Ambassador Jonah Reid of Solorgan humanity, it says. The Worthiness trial has been ended. The Council now calls this emergency session to discuss the presence of the Eye, Legacy Fleet, and the actions of your vessel's hidden systems. Quiet sounds spread through the hall, nervous clicks, small rumbles, soft tones. No one is laughing now. Jonah stops at the center mark and raises his head. Council members, he says, we did not intend to threaten you, but we also did not come here as weak supplicants. Humanity sent this ship, knowing it carried old power. We believed it was safer to bring that power into the open than to leave it hidden and forgotten. A small, many-eyed counselor lifts a slender limb. You brought a weapon, she says, voice tight, into our home. We brought a lock. Jonah answers, the weapon was already here, in your space, in your history. Your own archives held records of these ships. Your own treaties from the first cataclysm mention the legacy doctrine. You chose, over time, to forget. We chose to remember. Xylo's heavy mouth pulls back in a grimace. Fine words, they say, but we sit under the guns of machines that answer to no council. You say they will hold a day, a week, a century? What stops them from waking again whenever they choose? Jonah lets the question hang for a moment. It is the right question. Nothing stops time, he says. But I can tell you this. The legacy fleet does not choose in the way you think. It reacts. It follows rules that were set long ago. Those rules woke it when your trial turned from a test into something very close to an attack. Those same rules are why it stopped when I invoked a stand-down clause and accepted personal risk. Ferric clears his throat. Ambassador, he says, you told HELIO-9 that peace is worth some danger. That is not a small thing for a system built only to prevent harm. Jonah nods. Legacy logic now includes a simple idea: words before force. It can still fight to protect envoys, but it will wait for us to try talking first. That is new for it, and it trusts that I and others after me will keep that promise. A tall counselor covered in fine, shifting feathers leans in. Others after you? They asked. You plan to pass this relationship on? Jonah meets their gaze. We have to, he says. Old systems do not go away just because we dislike them. If we leave HELI-9 and the legacy fleet alone, without guides, they will sit and wait, and the next time someone fires the wrong pattern near a human envoy, they will respond again, wild and blind. If we stay linked, if we keep talking, we can teach them better rules. An insect-like counselor clicks softly. You want us to trust you to hold the leash on a fleet that almost no one knew existed until minutes ago. Yes, Jonah says simply, and I want you to hold us responsible if we fail. Murmurs rise. Some angry, some thoughtful. Xylotessa's voice cuts through them. You speak of responsibility while your hidden fleet blocks our sky, they say. You ask for trust you have not yet earned. Jonah looks up at the dome. The great dark shapes of the legacy ships are visible there, faint against the nebula glow. The legacy fleet is not here to rule you, he says. It is here to protect human envoys from massed, unlawful fire. That is its entire world. It does not care about borders, or trade routes, or status. It cares about patterns of attack. In this case, it saw a pattern that matched its trigger. Multiple ships focusing high fire on an envoy hull. You gave it that pattern. Some counselors shift uneasy. Dr. Sill shift uneasy. Ose watches their body signs, her eyes sharp. The marshal's decision passed the line, she says quietly, not into the hull system, but to Jonah's earpiece. They know it, they just don't want to say it. Yet, Varric's shoulders sag a little. We did not think, he says, partly to himself, partly to the room. We turned an old, cruel trial into a joke, and then into a show of power. We forgot that old designs did not laugh. Jonah turns his gaze toward him. Admiral Varric, he says, loud enough now for all to hear, you recognized the marks on our hull before anyone else. You tried to warn them. Varric's eyes meet his. There is tired weight there, a warning that was not heeded, he says. as many old warnings are not. Then let this be different. Jonah says, let us write it down clearly this time, in words everyone can see. The legacy fleet responds to three things: human envoys, massed fire, and its own rules. We cannot remove it easily. We cannot pretend it isn't there, but we can agree together never to trigger it again. A heavy pause follows. The feathered counselor raises a limb again. What do you propose? They asked. Details, ambassador. Not just hopes. Breathes once, slow. First, he says we define envoys under your law as protected not just in name, but with strict limits on what can be done to them during trials. No more near-lethal beams. No more extra rounds added out of anger. If you want to test a ship's hull, you do it with the envoy's full knowledge and with clear power caps. All of it set in writing. Several counselors nod at that. Dr. Osei notes rising agreement colors in a cluster of seats. Second, Jonah continues, we bring the legacy doctrine out of the secret vaults. We unseal the old first cataclysm records about these ships, not just for humans, for all council species, so everyone understands what is hidden in dark orbits and old metal silo spines twitch. You would air old war fears in public? They asked. That could cause panic. Panic comes from unknown danger, Jonah answers. Fear fades when people can point to a chart and say, here is the risk. Here are the rules. Here's what triggers it, and here's what does not. Ferric nods slowly. He is right, he says. We tried hiding that memory once. It did not stop the danger. It just made us forget where to step. Third, Jonah says, we, and by we I mean humanity and any council partners who agree, will maintain a direct monitored link with HELI-9 and the legacy fleet. We will publish regular reports on their status. If they change, you will know. Murmurs again, but now some are approving. And last, Jonah says, we ask you, the council, to accept that hidden, stable power is not always a threat to your pride. It can be a sign of responsibility too. My people did not build this fleet yesterday. They inherited it. They chose to keep it sleeping rather than turn it into a new empire. Today we chose to tell you it exists, even though we knew it would change how you see us. A small, round counselor with skin like shifting sand raises a stubby hand. Raises a stubby. You are saying, they ask, that strength can be used quietly, not shouted. Yes, Jonah says, sometimes the safest weapons are the ones no one rushes to show off. The chamber is quiet. Marshal Xylo Tess looks back up at the dome, at the dark ships. They frighten me, Xylo says, not hiding it now, not just because of their guns, but because they do not answer when I shout. I am used to giving orders and seeing motion. These things do not move for me. They are not yours, Ferric says gently. They never were. Xylo's spines lower a little further. It is not surrender, but it is something close to acceptance. What if we asked them to leave? Xylo says, still staring at the dome. Today, Jonah nods. That is exactly what I intend to do, he says. With your permission. The announcer looks to the council heads. There is a brief flash of private signals, colors dancing across badges. Permission granted, the announcer says. The council requests that Ambassador Jonah Reid direct the Legacy fleet to withdraw to dark orbit and hold there under the new rules. Jonah dips his head. Thank you, he says. He closes his eyes for a heartbeat. The bright lights of the hull dim behind his lids. He pictures the Ashen Reliquary's bridge. Rough and worn, he pictures the glowing panel with HELIO-9's careful text, HELIO-9, he says softly. His words go from the mic to the ship, and from the ship into that deep, strange core. This is Prime Envoy Jonah Reid. Situation update. Trial ended. No fire guarantee given and kept. Civilian risk remains high if you stay near the station. I request that the Legacy fleet return to dark orbit positions and enter deep standby. You will watch, but you will not advance or target unless we call you under lawful conditions. He pauses, knowing this next part matters. I also request, he says, that you accept a new long-term goal to reduce the chance you will ever be needed. We will work to make sure envoy attacks of the kind you were built for never happen again. That means your greatest success will be long stretches of nothing, of quiet. Can you accept that? In the dome, nothing seems to change. The black ships hang still. But on the Ashen Reliquary's bridge, the HELIO-9 panel responds. Input, request for strategics, Refcus, checking, doctrine, scar purpose, protect envoys, secondary terms, measured responds, civilian, Sadie, new action, required, possible interpretation, protecting voice by preventing triggers, remaining hidden to evade escalations, new long-term preference, edited, state guard and shadow, act only when no words remain, fleet command, return to previous dark orbit positions, motto, dormant watch. In the changer's clear this time, the Legacy ships begin to turn. Not in a rush, not with sharp burns, but with slow, grave motions. Their noses swing away from the station. Their engines flare just enough to move them back, along their hidden paths, slipping once more behind the bright clouds of the nebula. One by one, their shapes slide into the glow and vanish from easy sight. Sensors still see them, faint shadows against background radiation. But to the eye, they are gone. In the hall, long breath seems to flow through every seat. They're leaving, the feathered consular says aloud, relief in their voice. Marshal Xylos' shoulders drop. Admiral Ferric closes his eyes for a moment. In that second, his face looks far older than his years. On the Ashen Reliquary, Rhea watches the readings fade. Fleet distance increasing, she says, into the ship's log. EM signatures dropping below casual detection. Standby mode engaged. HEL. The signal HELI 9 reports low power monitoring only. Mason leans back in his seat. We actually did it, he says. We told the ghost army to go home, and it listened. Back in the council chamber, attention returns to Jonah. You have our thanks, the announcer says. And this time there is no mockery. All our thanks, but this changes much. Yes, Jonah agrees. It does. The small, sand-skinned counselor shakes their head slowly. We cannot keep the Worthiness trial as it is, they say. Not after this. Not knowing what harmless shows of force can wake. Varric stands again, not with anger now, but with steady purpose. I propose, he says, that we suspend all trials that involve direct fire on envoy vessels for all species. We replace them with tests of control, cooperation, and restraint. Strength is not just how hard you can hit. It is how little you need to. Xylo's jaw tightens. Marshal Varric says gently, your power is not threatened by fairness. It is strengthened by it. If the youngest species among us can carry a key to a fleet like that and still choose peace, what excuse do we older powers have to keep playing at cruelty? Silence. Then, slowly, several counselors raise their limbs, hands, or devices in agreement signals. The announcer's badge lights. Motion to reform the Worthiness trial is on the table. It says. On the table, it says, immediate vote requested. There is no long delay. One by one, signals flash. Yes, yes, yes. A few no, some abstain. But the board at the front of the hall climbs past the needed majority in under a minute. Motion passes. The Worthiness trial system will be reformed. No future envoy will face live weapons fire as part of initial council recognition. Doctor, from. Osai's mouth trembles for a second, then steadies. You just changed a 1,000-year ritual. She whispers to Jonah, in an hour. Not alone, Jonah whispers back. We had help. From the past, Marshal Silo Tess remains standing. Their spines are low now, almost flat. Humanity of soul, they say. And the old habit of scorn is gone from their voice. You have forced us to face our own arrogance. You have brought dangerous ghosts into our sight, and then you have shown restraint in guiding them away. For this, I acknowledge your strength. They seem to choke slightly on the word acknowledge. But they say it, the Council will grant humanity full recognized status. Xylo continues. Not just as a young species to be tested and mocked, but as a stable partner. You have shown that you carry power, you do not flaunt, and that you prefer calm to fire. That is rare. The hall stirs with mixed sounds. Some pleased, some uneasy, but no one speaks against it. Jonah bows his head. On behalf of humanity, he says, we accept your recognition and we offer you ours, not as fearful children, but as equals who have walked through something hard together. The announcer logs it Treaties will be written later. But the main thing has already happened. The look in the eyes of many delegates has changed. When they see Jonah now, they no longer see just a soft-voiced man in a decent suit. They see the calm center point of a web of old power and new choice. Later, when the hall has emptied and the long, careful talks have moved to side rooms and screens, Jonah returns to the ashen reliquary. The ship feels quieter again. The deep hum has faded to its old, familiar vibration. The glowing lines on the hull are mostly dark, with only a few faint traces left like cooled ash. On the bridge, Rhea and Mason stand up as he enters. Elise turns from the main console. Dr. Jose follows Jonah in and leans against a bulkhead, tired but watchful. How did they take it? Elise asks. They're rewriting their rules. Jonah says, little by little. They ended live fire trials. They unsealed the legacy files. They recognized us at a higher level. Mason lets out a long breath, so we're not the kids' table anymore. Something like that, Jonah says. Rhea smiles weakly, and the big, scary fleet. Going home, Jonah says, or whatever counts as home for ships that sleep in the dark. HELI-9 agreed to stand down and watch. He walks over to the strange panel that had woken earlier. It still glows softly. Text scrolls in a calm, slow way. HELI-9 status. Stable. FIDA's status. Dormant watch. And for a limit. HELI-9. Jonah says softly. You did well. For a moment, nothing changes. Then a single line appears. Environment status. Envoy alive. See Ivilian Station. Intact, large scale, fire. Not present, protection task successful. For now. Jonah smiles, a small, tired thing. Yes, he says. For now. Elise steps closer, her boots clicking softly on the worn deck. You know, she says, most captains dream of a ship that repairs itself and calls in its own backup when things go wrong. I just never pictured the backup being a legend. Mason laughs, the sound rough but real. Careful what you dream of, Captain. Rhea leans on her console. Do you think they'll ever let us take this ship back to regular duty? She asks. Or is she a museum piece again? Jonah looks around the bridge, the old metal, the faded seals, the solid, imperfect plates. I think, he says slowly, that this ship has just become something else. Not cargo, not war, not museum. Something like a meeting room that moves. A link between what was and what is. Wherever she goes, she carries a reminder that old systems still live and that we have to choose every day how to guide them. Jose nods, and people will listen to that reminder, she says. Fear can make people close their ears, but relief opens them. Elise folds her arms, looking at Jonah. And you? She asks. What are you now? Envoy? guardian of old fleets, professional calm breather. Jonah chuckles softly. Still an ambassador, he says. Still a man who likes quiet nights over Earth. I just have more to be quiet about. He looks out through the forward view. The nebula glows gently. The station ring shines with activity. Seon ring shines with activity. Far beyond, too far for simple sight, the legacy fleet lies in its dark arc, engines dark, systems low, watching patterns of energy and movement with old, patient logic. They are not heroes. They are not villains. They are tools from another time waiting to be used well, or badly, or not at all. HELIO-9. Jonah says, one last time, remember this day. Remember that you stood ready, but did not fire. Remember that words worked. If you ever wake again, carry that memory with your rules. The panel answers. Memory flag set. Station. Peace instant. Link to terms. Words before foresee. Jonah nods. He thinks of children on Earth, in New York and Nairobi and small towns, watching quiet feeds that will show highlights of this day. They will see a dented old ship. They will see sleek, bright cruisers. They will see a ring station and dark shapes in the distance. Some will be afraid. Some will be curious. Maybe some will feel what he felt at 16, that duty to stand between fear and the future, to keep voices steady so that guns do not have to speak. Set course back to Seoul when they clear us, Elise says to Ria. Slow lane, no need for drama. Yes, Captain, Ria says, fingers moving. Council corridor just turned green. We have priority exit. Looks like they want us gone, but with respect. Mason pushes off from his console. He'll check the hull stress seams, he says. Not that she seems to care. But it makes me feel useful. Dr. Rossi straightens. And I will start drafting the new training files, she says. Every future envoy should know what an old ship can do when pushed, and how to talk it down. Jonah stays at the front a moment longer, watching the ring station shrink as the ashen reliquary slowly eases away. The ship is still ugly by most modern standards, uneven, scarred, dark. But to him, now, it looks steady, like an old guard at a door that almost no one notices, until one day the door shakes and that guard plants its feet and says, without shouting, not today. He closes his eyes and breathes. In, 4, hold, 4, out. Above Earth, nights will still be calm. City lights will still draw soft shapes across the dark. Most people will never think about self-healing alloys, or legacy nodes, or ships that sleep in dark orbit. That is all right. Their safety does not depend on knowing every old story. It depends on someone somewhere, choosing again and again to guide old power toward new peace. Out here, in this quiet moment, inside a rusted-looking hull that carries a hidden mind, you sit with Jonah as the stars slide by and the ship turns its nose toward home. The galaxy has not changed in shape, but its rules have shifted just a little toward calm, and that is enough for now.